This video I'm going to touch upon introductions. So I want you, while we look at this introduction sheet, again, have the assignment sheet out for the first assignment, the education goals assignment, and be thinking about your introduction to this paper. So as I go through this sheet, think about how you're going to construct your introduction, and I'll give you some ideas, some hints, some things to work on that after this video, when I get to the end, I'm going to have you do a little bit of free writing on introductions. And then the next video, I'll touch upon thesis statements. So if you go to our Blackboard page, all right, here's our Blackboard homepage here. And on the toolbar, under writing resources, I uploaded a bunch of these writing resources handouts that I stole from University of North Carolina Writing Center. So you see introductions, thesis statements, meal paragraphs, conclusions. There's a meal organizer. There's the Purdue OWL website, and then the UNC Writing Center handout website. So if you click on the introductions handout, this will pop up. All right, so let's walk through this. Introductions and conclusions can be the most difficult parts of papers to write. Usually when you sit down to respond to an assignment, you have at least some sense of what you want to say in the body of your paper. You might have chosen a few examples you want to use or have an idea that will help you answer the main question of your assignment. These sections, therefore, may not be as hard to write, and it's fine to write them first. But in your final draft, these middle parts of the paper can't just come out of thin air. They need to be introduced and concluded in a way that makes sense to your reader. So we've been working on the paper thus far. I've wanted you to do some free writing, some brainstorming, some note taking, and you might have some ideas of what you want to put in your body. You must mention these in your intro, though, as well. And so the reader knows what your paper is going to be about. Your introduction and conclusion, this is continuing on, if you want to follow along right here. Your introduction and conclusion act as bridges that transport your readers from their own lives into the place of your analysis. If your readers pick up your paper about education, the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, for example, they need a transition to help them leave behind the world of Chapel Hill, television, email, and the Daily Tar Heel, and to help them temporarily enter the world of 19th century American slavery. These examples, you know, because I took this example from the University of North Carolina, it's going to mention Chapel Hill, the Daily Tar Heel. The example they're touching upon is a paper on Frederick Douglass. So when it talks about Frederick Douglass here, think about our topic. Always be thinking about our topic in the back of your mind. Education goals assignment. Remember the 3 things I'm asking you to do in your paper. That's going to go in your introduction. You're going to touch upon something from your past education, something in the present, and something in that you hope for the future. So those will be the aspects you mention in your intro, and you're going to explore them at length in your body. All right. By providing an introduction that helps your readers make a transition between their own world and the issues you will be writing about, you give your readers the tools they need to get into your topic and care about what you are saying. Similarly, once you've hooked your readers with the introduction and offered evidence to prove your thesis, your conclusion can provide a bridge to help your readers make the transition back to their daily lives. There's another handout which we'll get to a little later on conclusions. Note that what constitutes a good introduction may vary widely based on the kind of paper you are writing and the academic discipline in which you are writing it. If you are uncertain what kind of introduction is expected, ask your instructor. We're writing this is like a personal paper, right? A narrative paper. You're going to be talking about you, your education, your goals. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. The opening paragraph of your paper will provide your readers with their initial impressions of your argument, your writing style, and the overall quality of your work. A vague, disorganized, error-filled, off-the-wall, or boring introduction will probably create a negative impression. On the other hand, a concise, engaging, and well-written introduction will start your readers off thinking highly of you, your analytical skills, your writing, and your paper. So one of my pet peeves, one thing that I do not want you to do no matter what in your introduction, please, like James Brown now, don't start your paper off with a broad, vague platitude. A platitude is basically a cliche statement that everyone knows. So don't start your paper off with everybody has a different experience with education, or everyone's education is different, or something like that. Just some broad statement that says nothing. This is your paper. I want you to jump right in and start talking about you and your experiences. I don't, I want whatever your name is on the top. I want this to know it's your paper, not that it could be anybody's. And it's different as well too. Like if you know taking English classes, every English professor, instructor, teacher may want something different. I'm not a huge fan on opening your papers with questions. All right, so I mean, it's a way you can, but personally, I'm not a huge fan. So, like, don't start your paper. What do you think of when you think of education, or have you ever had an experience with this, with something like it's just vague. It's kind of easy. It's cliche. Start your paper off with a declarative statement. All right, a couple different ways you can start your paper. You could jump into a scene, an anecdote, an experience you had. Like, put us right in the scene. Or you could just start your paper off with something like, my experience with education has been both positive and negative for a variety of different reasons. You're starting off with a declarative statement, something specific, not anything vague there. So, and we'll talk about this a little more as we move on. Your introduction is an important roadmap for the rest of your paper. Your introduction conveys a lot of information to your readers. You can let them know what your topic is, why it is important, and how you plan to proceed with your discussion. In many academic disciplines, your introduction should contain a thesis that will assert your main argument. I want your thesis to be the last sentence of your introduction, and I'll cover this in detail in the next video. Your introduction should also give the reader a sense of the kinds of information you will use to make that argument and the general organization of the paragraphs and pages that will follow. After reading your introduction, your readers should not have any major surprises in store when they read the main body of your paper. Ideally, moving on, your introduction will make your readers want to read your paper. The introduction should capture your readers' interest, making them want to read the rest of your paper. Open with a compelling story. So that's what I mentioned. You could jump right into a scene from your past, right? A moment that sets the scene, or something in the present. I'm good, no interesting questions, please. Just for me. Or a vivid example can get your readers to see why your topic matters and serve as an invitation for them to join you for an engaging intellectual conversation. Remember, though, that these strategies may not be suitable for all papers and disciplines. All right. This is, for my money, probably the most important part of this introduction sheet, right? This part here. Read this and think about this closely. And I'm going to ask you, again, like we did last video, after I read this part, I'm going to want you to pause the video and jot down on a separate piece of paper some things with this. Start by thinking about the question or questions you are trying to answer. Your entire essay will be a response to this question, and your introduction is the first step toward that end. Your direct answer to the assigned question will be your thesis, and your thesis will likely be included in your introduction, so it is a good idea to use the question as a jumping off point. Imagine that you are assigned the following questions. So we're going to ignore this stuff down here for now. Look back at the beginning of this little segment. Start by thinking about the question or questions you are trying to answer. And let's go to the assignment sheet, right? The description. For this assignment, you will write a 2 to 3 page paper that describes your education and goals for your education. What are you doing? What am I doing in this paper? I'm describing the goals of education and my education up to this point. You're doing 3 things. You're taking a moment from the past and talking about that, talking about the importance of it, how and why it led you to CCRI. Describe the present. What's going on? Struggles, triumphs, anything you're doing in the present. And then some goals, a goal or some goals for the future. So those are the 3 things. One way to start doing this as well, think about the questions, do the good old-fashioned who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? So On a separate sheet of paper right now, this is what I want you to do. After I ask you this question, please pause the video and do some writing. Write down who, what, when, where, why, and how. And you could do that for the past. Describe those, answer those questions for the past. What was important? Who influenced you? What were some things you did? Do that for the present and do that for the future, right? So pause the video and write those, the who, what, when, where, why, and how down on a sheet of paper. And you can start jotting down notes. What was the moment from the past that influenced your education that led you to this moment? What is the moment now going? What's going on now? Struggles, triumphs, things, adjusting to this remote learning. And what do you want for the future? You're answering those questions extremely specific. Be specific, right? Those will be some aspects you can put into your intro. Moving on, you can, write that down. This will help you out. We're going to skip this stuff on. This is helpful, but this gives you an idea with they're using Frederick Douglass to construct their intro. I want to move on to the third page. Here are some things you can do to start your introduction. Start with an intriguing example. All right. Use an example from your past. Use an example now. What's going on? Be extremely specific. This is a way to jump into your paper. If you want to use a quotation, that's fine. I'm not a monster fan of quotations, kind of like questions. If you do use a quotation, make sure you tie it in with exactly what you're talking about and saying, right? A vivid and perhaps unexpected anecdote. So I like an anecdote. This gives the reader, puts the reader right into the scene of the action. So this could be a way to start your paper as well. So for this education paper, you can, like I said, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but you can go back to the past and open your paper like that. Or you could just start with a broad intro overview stating something like, my educational experience has been extremely varied and led me to where I am today. And then you could add some of the notes from your past, a couple sentences about the past, a couple sentences about the present, a couple sentences about the future, then your thesis. And I'm going to cover the thesis in detail in the next video. But this can gauge how long your intro is supposed to be. So if you have a declarative sentence that opens your intro, there's a sentence, a couple sentences about the past, a couple about the present, and a couple about the future. We're into like 6-7 sentences there. And then your thesis, which is another sentence. So you're into about 8 sentences. So that gives you an idea of the length of your intro. I'm going to talk about body paragraphs and thesis statements and all that stuff. Think about each of your paragraphs for this paper will be about a half page long, double-spaced MLA style. I'm going to upload the MLA videos on there. So think about your introductory paragraph. If it's double-spaced, it'll be about a half page long. And then your body paragraphs will be about a half page, maybe a little more as well. And that'll be your paper. If you're writing 2 to 3 pages, if each body paragraph is a half page, or each paragraph in general, that's 4 body paragraphs for 2 pages, 6 body paragraphs for 3 pages. You start to map it out, right? Your intro, you can have 2 body paragraphs for your past, 1 to 2 for your present, 1 to 2 for the future, and then your conclusion. That gives you an idea for the paper. So here's some examples of not so great introductions. You can read that. But that's just a quick intro overview on introductions. What I want you to do now, because I'm going to end this video, again on a separate sheet of paper, start to jot down some notes. Start to outline and highlight and talk about what you want to put into your introduction. And then you could start drafting the introduction. So, all right, that was a quick overview on introductions. Again, as always, email me with questions, comments, concerns, and I'll be posting another video soon on thesis statements. All right, everybody, talk to you soon.